Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. Like we talked about last week, got a special show. We're going to go through the NFL schedule. We're actually pre-recording this as the schedule was just released. So we're going to give our thoughts. And I wanted to mention first off that I was wrong about the Labor Day thing, which I thought was a shoo-in. But it seems like they decided to screw the Steelers and the Cowboys over by adding in the Hall of Fame game from last year. So by adding the 2020 Hall of Fame game on top of their preseason schedule, the Steelers now have 4 preseason games. But because they did that, they're able to keep their television schedule the exact same, Matt. So they have the national televised game for the Hall of Fame the first weekend of August, like normal. And then instead of having other games, they're just skipping right to the second week of August, where they're calling that preseason week 1. So the Steelers are going to have to match up with the Eagles in what would be their first game. Then they're going to go play the Lions week 2, and then the Panthers week 3 to end out the preseason, which to me is just baffling. But I had speculated that I thought when they released these times that they would try to do something with Labor Day. They didn't go in that direction. The schedule leaked very early, so you probably had already saw the dates as you listened to last week's show, which had a lot of downloads, so thanks for supporting the show. Want to get that out there. But just looking at this, it just fills me with disgust. Because if there's one thing the Steelers do not need, is an extra game for no reason. Like, Ben shouldn't even play in these games. That's my thought. But what are you thinking, Matt?
Well, I think he probably shouldn't, because at this point he really doesn't have a whole lot that he has to show or to figure out. To me, I think that they had what it looks like is a very physical preseason, like with playing Dallas, with playing the Eagles, Detroit. I know off the top of your head, when you're thinking physical games, you're not thinking necessarily these teams. But I think with the way that they address the draft and the way that they're addressing the offseason, I think even in a preseason format, those teams are going to be more physical. That is going to set itself up for potentially some early season injuries for Pittsburgh.
And that's where I don't even want to play around with that first game. I don't understand why they couldn't just give Pittsburgh and Dallas the first week off. Like, why throw that Eagles game in there? Just get rid of that one. Count the Cowboys as week 1, and then just go ahead and give them a break. Like, maybe because the matchups didn't really work out. But see, that doesn't make sense either, because you have Dallas and Pittsburgh, they would play the week before, but that would technically be their week 1 game. So the NFL could just have everything the exact same, but I know what they're thinking. They're thinking, all right, we're going to get Dallas and Pittsburgh, 2 of our best franchises, most popular. We're going to play them. And then we can't miss out on the TV revenue potentially from their regional contracts for the other 3 games. And this is a carryover. They postponed that game from last year. So they're actually just fulfilling it, and they're going to have, I want to say, and I could be wrong on this, but I think they're going to do 2 Hall of Fame inductions. I feel like we talked about that when they made an announcement or something, where they're going to have last year's class come to that game. And then I think that they were going to have something in the actual week 1 kickoff. But these are all say to be determined. So I'm not really sure. They're going to have 4 games that they're focusing on in the preseason. Nothing in week 1 after that Hall of Fame game. They're going to have week 2. They're focusing on the Chiefs and Cardinals, and then the Jags and the Saints, which I think is a good idea, because Urban Meyer, a lot of people are going to be wondering what it's going to look like under him, even if it's only the preseason. And then week 3, they're going to focus on the Dolphins and the Bengals, which to me is a weird choice. because they're not nationally relevant. The Bengals were so bad last year. Maybe is Joe Burrow back from his injury? Maybe that's what they were thinking. Try to get some hype on the Heisman. But then the other one, the Browns and the Falcons, which you're looking at. Browns are coming up, and they're putting a little bit of focus on them. But the Falcons, I don't see how they're not going to keep declining. They're on the same trajectory as the Pittsburgh Steelers. As Matt Ryan gets older and they don't help their defense, it seems like, ever, they're like, we're just going to keep giving them more and more weapons, but that's not going to work out. So some odd choices. I almost wonder if there's so much smoke with Aaron Rodgers, because before, there's no way they would have not featured a Packers game. Like, they would have 100% had a Packers game, because I threw a bunch of double negatives in there. But they would have had Aaron Rodgers front and center in one of these preseason games, potentially the Week 3 one, because that's where you're going to see your starters, at least for a little bit. But he's ready to leave. I don't think we talked about it on last week's show, but they were saying now that he's been in contact with other players about potentially meeting up with him, which is weird because free agency is basically over. So, like, who are these players he's meeting up with? And it's not like the NBA where there's only a couple of players where you can be disgruntled and, like, force a trade to whatever team you want. So, like, I just don't see the NFL GMs giving in on that. Like, a wide receiver is disgruntled. Okay, do what the Steelers did with Le'Veon Bell. Just let him sit out. Like, we don't have to trade you because you want to go play with Aaron Rodgers. And, like, Devontae Adams came out and said something about, oh, well, it's going to change a lot of things for me if he leaves. Like, well, yeah. I mean, you went from a guy that had a bunch of drops to one of the premier wide receivers in the NFL because of him. Of course you'd want to leave with him. So I wonder, just looking at this primetime slate, if that's something that they were thinking. Like, hey, I wonder, we don't really know what's going to happen here. Let's just pick a couple unknown up-and-coming teams, and it's preseason, so we can check one off the box for putting the Bengals on TV. You know what I mean?
That could be it. But
and looking at this, they counted 5. Go ahead.
Maybe they're just betting on the fact that if Burrow comes back with having his receiver with him, that they're going to be better.
And a lot of people expected them to take that jump almost to like a 6-win team, 7-win team. Not really playoffs, but coming back. But I don't know. In terms of TV contract, they are counting that Steelers-Cowboys game as the 5th national televised game for the preseason, which seems like a standard thing. I really don't think that they're going to have any major drop-off. And like I already talked about it last week, so if you listen to last week's show, you know they force season ticket holders to have these preseason games. I even saw a fluff piece. I forget who wrote it, because the one thing, I think it was the Sporting News, really annoyed me today, because as I've been clicking refresh a bunch of times to see if the Steelers schedule came out, they kept writing these articles about, hey, new schedule 2021, and when you clicked on it, it was their prediction for the schedule. So like they kept updating their article to make it seem like the schedule had dropped. And so it was always on top of Twitter and Google and wherever else you're looking, which is annoying. And like for that reason, they should be blacklisted and they're going to go on my hate list. Sporting News. I know that's who it was because I have one up just to look at it. It's like, why are you doing that? Like, you have to be losing because of the bounce rate. I have an ad blocker on anyway. So what are you really gaining by faking the schedule release? Like, I'm going to know it's not on there if you don't have any dates. But the Steelers put it out. They actually had on their Twitter eventually that it was going to bounce at 7:45 at night. So luckily it came out before that pre-show. I didn't even watch the pre-show. So I really wasn't sure what that was about. But that's the main thing with this. I was surprised that they didn't do Labor Day. The preseason annoyed me, and I don't want to spend a quarter of the show just complaining about preseason because it doesn't matter. So let's go through and do our schedule breakdown. The first game, of course, the Bills. If you're watching the video, which I'm putting up on Facebook and YouTube, probably at the same time this week. We have the schedule up so you can kind of follow along, but we're going to try to do our wins and losses. And I was going to actually write them down. So let's see. I'll write mine down. I'll text them to you as I do it. And then I'll tally it up. So, of course, they play at Buffalo week 1. I'm going loss. That's a brutal opener. We saw how good Buffalo was last year and how solid they were. They play to the Steelers' weaknesses. Everything that they did, I know Steelers are coming in with a hot defense. They have the toughest schedule this year, the Steelers do. Last year they had the second easiest. That's why they started undefeated. And so I'm going loss. What do you think in that first game?
I kind of like Buffalo, but I'm going to go with the Steelers win there. It's early in the year with the fresh running back, fresh stable of bodies. I kind of like going with the veteran there. I think Roethlisberger has them ready to go out the gate.
All right. We're already disagreeing in the first week. Week 2, the Raiders. That's a win for me. I know your boy Gruden. We're going to hear about it if Gruden starts off with some losses, but I haven't seen any of the moves that the Raiders should have made to kind of take that next step. They had some reaches in the draft. We talked about some other weird things personnel-wise that it just seems like Gruden's kind of just treading water now and not really taking that next step. Plus, as you said, early in the season, Steelers are most likely going to be healthy, so they're going to get that early win. The losses to the Raiders that have been happening have been later in the year, so that's a good game to get early, I think. What do you think?
I'm going to go with a Raiders win there, just because I think their biggest issue was their defense. So with bringing Bradley in and shoring up the defense, they were scoring points. The issue is that they would get in a game and then just completely blow it because they had no defense. So I think they shore up the defense, and I think they get the win there.
All right, still going opposite of me. Week 3, the Bengals. Now, this one is at home, it looks like. So, I have the schedule. I don't know. I'm trying to squint and read it off my computer screen. So, yes, this one's at home. I'm going Steelers. I know they split last year. I'm kind of leaning towards that split again. But I think they take care of business early in the year at home. What about you?
Yeah, I got to agree with that one. I think there's going to be a little bit of bad blood left over from Juju getting destroyed, and I think they're going to come ready to go.
All right, the big one. At Green Bay, I'm going to go Steelers win because I don't think Aaron Rodgers playing there this year. And whenever you lose your starting quarterback, I think everything's going to be a mess. And hell, even if he comes back, there's so much smoke around him right now that franchise is going to be a complete disaster. I don't see how your quarterback could come in. He's already mad, and he's going to be like, you know what, I'm going to play awesome this year. I think it's going to be oh, we're going to go through the motions, and then you'll be getting rid of me. That's how I feel like that season's going to go for them. So I'm marking that down as a win for the Steelers. What do you think?
Yeah, I have to agree with you there, but I think it's going to be for a different reason. Because I do think with what Green Bay is doing, they recognize that Rodgers has to be the quarterback. I don't see them trading him unless somebody drops a ridiculous amount of draft picks and stuff that I just don't think happens. So I think what they do is they end up restructuring his deal. And I think what Rodgers is wanting is he's wanting it not to be the way they're doing more of the veteran deals where it's just a front loaded, we're going to give you a year and then be able to buy you out at the end. I think he's looking to try to be named for a longer term contract is what I'm thinking he's after.
I disagree. I think he's going for the long-term, let's win some Super Bowls. And so this leads into my next pick, the Broncos. I think he ends up there. There's a lot of smoke that Denver's really pursuing him hard. You talked about not having picks and stuff. Denver really doesn't care. They haven't really made a move to increase their quarterback. They still have a solid defense and some guys. Aaron Rodgers is going to make them play better. And I think he's going to go there. The Steelers will lose to them because they have him. And if he doesn't move, maybe you can flip them. Then maybe they lose at Green Bay instead. I don't think they beat Aaron Rodgers. I know he's kind of up and down. But early in the year, he's playing, like you said, with something to prove. Maybe it's a contract. I think after last year's loss, I was one of the things I kept pointing out. Like, why didn't you go for it? Like, what are you doing? Run for the touchdown. Like, a lot of people saw that in the playoff game where he kind of choked. And so, like, I wonder, is he getting a bunch of hate mail from Green Bay fans? And so he just wants out. I'm kind of leaning a little bit more positive where I think he's looking at his legacy. And he sees guys like Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning went to the Broncos. And so he's looking at that and he says, you know what, that's going to be a better scenario for me where they've had this team and one of the weak links is quarterback. What if I can Peyton Manning it? Peyton Manning took them to 2 Super Bowls. They got killed in that one by the Seahawks. But that's my take. And so that's why I made those picks. I think the Steelers start like 3-1. Everyone's like, oh, yeah, here we go. And then the wheels fall off. And you'll see that in my next round of picks. But what do you have in the Broncos game?
Yeah, I kind of see that. Like, I think even if Rodgers gets traded to Denver, I still don't think that Denver has the consistent tools to be able to compete with Pittsburgh. Like, Denver's strength is going to be their wide receivers, but I think Pittsburgh also has somewhat of a strength in their secondary now. So I think that it matches up well.
So what do you have there?
I go Pittsburgh.
Oh, I'm going Denver. But that's because I have a weird conspiracy that Aaron Rodgers will be their quarterback. Going into week 6, Seahawks. I'm going loss for the Steelers again. I think, like I said, I think they start hot. People are on them, 3-1. Now they drop to 500. The Seahawks, they don't play consistently under Pete Carroll. I'm starting to kind of lose respect for him because it's almost like, is he not a good coach? Like Russell Wilson wanted out of there. I just think that this is one of the games where Pittsburgh will lose it. Everyone will be high on the Seahawks. Look at how well Russell Wilson prepared and came out on fire last year, very similar to what the Steelers did. But I think that there's more at play there where Pittsburgh, this is where the wheels start to fall off. And then everyone's talking about, well, week 7's the bye week. They're going to come back. They're going to be refreshed. And then they're going to take care of business because they have a lot of division games left. But I think this is where the chinks in the armor start to show, especially on offense. And Ben starts to press, and everyone knows what happens. But what do you think of the Seahawks game?
I think it's going to be a game that you can catch up on some sleep, that you can go to bed, and you don't have to worry about it because it'll be a 9-6 field goal fest with Pittsburgh coming out on top.
All right, dude. We're pretty much disagreeing a lot here. I like it. I mentioned the bye week, week 7. Week 8, the Browns. And so I think the tides have turned. I think the Browns should have beat the Chiefs. I think they got ripped off in the playoffs by the refs. I don't think they would have beat my man Tom Brady. You don't beat him unless you're Eli Manning. Or I guess the Eagles, but that was a different thing. They had Nick Foles at that time. I'm going to put another loss here. I think everyone starts to throw it around like, what are we doing? Maybe we should have went after Aaron Rodgers. Because like I honestly think, why wouldn't you if you're Pittsburgh? If Aaron Rodgers plays the entire season at Green Bay and Ben Roethlisberger finishes the season and they don't get another playoff win, or at least even make a run, because at this point, it's not even about playoff wins for Ben. He needs to win the Super Bowl because his career is basically over. So if they don't get it done, why would you let Aaron Rodgers fall right to the Broncos? The Steelers have no plan at quarterback. That's why I was glad they didn't draft one. Just build the rest of your team, and then maybe you can attract a quarterback. Like that's what I was begging for all of last season, it felt like. So go out there, and maybe it'll be like a Pittsburgh blessing. Because if Aaron Rodgers lands at Pittsburgh, Eagles fans will be pissed. Ravens fans will be pissed. Cleveland, Cincinnati, Dallas, Green Bay. Like, just add to the list of all the fans that would be pissed in that scenario. So I really want that to happen. If he goes to the Broncos, it's kind of like, how are the Broncos getting so lucky? Is it really the John Elway factor? But who knows? Maybe it will happen. But I think they have a loss to the Browns here. I think I'm actually having them lose both games to the Browns. So what do you think in this first one?
Yeah, I mean, I think in both of them, I think this may be a year that they get swept by the Browns because Cleveland was aggressive in the offseason. I think like we're really hard on teams that they do nothing in the free agency when they have that window to win. And I think Cleveland recognizes this is their window right now, with Baker Mayfield being getting enough done at quarterback. They have the receivers, the running game. They splurged on the defensive players. Like, they have all of the pieces there. It's can they take the step and finally get over the hump and make a deep playoff push, not just get in and be a one and done. So I honestly think that this could be a team that on paper can play in December and January.
Well, you mean January, February, because they pushed back all the season with that extra week. But let's go. Week 9. This is when things start to turn around. Right now I have the Steelers at 3-4. This is the make and break stretch for them. They play the Bears. They should win this game. Andy Dalton should not be the quarterback for the Bears. They bring in Justin Fields. I think he'll be playing at that point. The Steelers at this level, they're always good on defense. They're not going to lose to kind of like a rookie quarterback with the Bears' weapons and stuff. Like, they kind of play right into their hands. So this is a win, and I think this is like the first must win because the first half of the season, things are going to get rocky. Now, with the way their schedule finishes, you have to win this game. So I have them doing it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Pittsburgh has always played well with younger quarterbacks, and I don't think Dalton. I think either Andy Dalton is either forced out or is injured by this time. That I think you see Fields, and I think he's in for a world of hurt.
All right, next one, Lions. I'd have the same thing here where they made some moves. I don't think that Goff is the type of quarterback that could sit back and beat Pittsburgh. I mean, they had some great battles with the Rams, but this isn't the Rams. So he's going into a scenario where Matt Stafford was the offense. I don't think it clicks week 1 or season 1 with him here, and I don't think that they have it together by week 10. So I have this as a win. What do you have?
I'm thinking loss, to be honest.
Go ahead. Why?
There's something about Detroit that they don't feel like the same old Lions. They're following like with their draft strategy and the guys that they're going after in free agency. They're kind of following that Parcells model that I really think consistently works in the NFL. That they drafted the offensive linemen. They're going out like building offensive line, defensive line. Like they're building physical pieces. I think with some of the other games that Pittsburgh's playing, these more physical matchups early, I think it wears them down. That you're going after the high momentum Cleveland. That I think they're primed for a stretch of being upset. I think in 10 and 11 they end up losing.
I just don't trust Goff that much. So it could be a game that they're going to lose, but I actually have that for the Chargers game. Because I think Herbert's done a lot of good things in his rookie year. The Chargers, like I said, I thought they had a really good draft. And I think they're making those strides. The Steelers have to travel to this game. It's a night game. On Sunday, it just spells that they're going to lose. And I could see it being a big loss. And so right now, if you're keeping score with my picks at home, they're 5-5 at this point. And I think they're wondering like what's going to happen with this season. Like, are they going to be able to pull some out to make the playoffs? I just think that they had a little run going, wins over the Bears and the Lions, and then they lose here. What do you think?
Yeah, I kind of had I have them losing there as well. Just because I do think the Chargers are going to be an improving team, and I think that you're going to see some of this wear and tear starting to settle in with Pittsburgh by this time of the year, and they're going to be in trouble.
All right, so I think that the wear and tear hasn't really hit yet, and I think that they're going to rally. They play the Bengals. They're going to go ahead and get that revenge win. Because I think did I have them winning the first one? I did have them winning the first one. So I guess I'll stick with my guns. I'll have it with a loss here. So we'll say that the struggles hit one more week. So because I think that they're going to split. I think they'll win the first one. This one's on the road, and I think people are really starting to question like what's going to happen with this team. But go ahead. What do you think?
I think they still beat the Bengals. I still think that they're missing too much, and even with if they still have Burrow healthy at this point, which is highly unlikely, I just don't know that they have enough to keep up with them. So I think Pittsburgh wins it.
All right, so I'm gonna have I shifted my picks a little bit, but I always had this one down. I think this is the rally point right now, where they're gonna go ahead and they play the Ravens rivalry game. They get up for it. They know they need to win, and they get the win in this first one. What do you have week 13?
Well, I think they're going to get a win, but I don't think it's this one because they're still playing for playoff seeding, division rights, and I think Baltimore beats them in this matchup.
All right, week 14, the Vikings. I think that their style just plays against the Steelers so well that it's another win for Pittsburgh. Like, I think this is the one where everyone says, all right, now they're starting to hit another little run here. Are they going to be able to finish strong and make the playoffs? What do you think?
I think this is another field goal fest. And that's such a coin flip. I think this game just ends in a tie. They just get tired and they just end in a 21-21 tie.
All right, put a tie down. I don't know if you're keeping your tally. I'm going to text you all my picks as I go. That way I don't lose them. Next game, week 15, Tennessee. I think this is where the wheels fall off. They're going to get a loss here. They don't match up well. This is like the opposite of the Vikings. Like, I know that the Tennessee is like a run-first type team, but that ball control offense just eats Pittsburgh up and will play Ben into a bunch of turnovers. So I have a loss there.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. I think that physical style.
And it's late in the season. So you're almost like, all right, what are we doing here? You're falling apart. And I think that carries into week 16. So it's another loss because they play the Chiefs. I don't see any drop off from the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs are still going to be the favorite in the AFC. And I last year was such a loss for them in the Super Bowl that I think that they're going to come and battle back. And to be honest, I wouldn't even be surprised if there was a rematch. I just think that there's, in the Super Bowl, against Tampa Bay. So I just think that there's so much competition extra here in the AFC that might not happen with the Browns and the Bills, potentially for some rematches in the playoffs. But I think they're still a slight number one for me overall going into this season. What do you think for week 16?
Yeah, I think the Chiefs are still going to be the team to beat. So I think that's part of that slide that I think they end up losing to the Chiefs.
All right, and then week 17, against the Browns. I already said I think this is the year the Browns get a sweep. I could be wrong, but I think that they're gonna settle in, and this is where all hope is basically lost in Pittsburgh. Although with the extra week, we don't know. Losing teams get into the playoffs all the time. This loss cements Mike Tomlin's first losing record, something that his apologists always point at. But I think when you look at the moves they made and just relying on Ben, it just doesn't work out. It doesn't work out. He hasn't shown me anything down the stretch that he can stay healthy. And I hate it because I like Ben. I want him to win the Super Bowl. But at this point, he had better teams a couple of years ago, and they choked. So this is it. Like, the ride's over. And so I think this loss will be one of the ones where it's like, all right, they're done. So that's my Week 17 pick. What do you have?
By this time, I think it could be a two-pony show. And I think at that point, I'm kind of leaning towards Pittsburgh potentially winning just because is Cleveland going to be resting players for the playoffs? Like I look at week 17 and 18, they could be if Pittsburgh's losing a lot of these mid-season games and they're kind of out of playoff contention, they could still be playing while Baltimore and Cleveland, who are likely going to be fighting for they're going to be battling for the championship. I can see them potentially resting some guys versus Pittsburgh.
Well, see, I don't think the Browns do it, but that is my Week 18 pick. I think they sweep Baltimore because I think it's one of the years where it's kind of like, hey, this is what happens. Like, hey, maybe Ben should come back for one more year, and it kind of gives them like the false hope of like, hey, look, we did sweep the Ravens. Like, there are some good things. They're supposed to be one of the top teams in the AFC, and I don't know if I've seen it. And one of the things that might even be crazy is like, what happens if like Baltimore gets rid of Lamar Jackson and they go after like an Aaron Rodgers type? Because there was a rumor came out right after our NFL draft show where they had said that they were looking at him for a 4-year deal, and I don't know if he ever signed it and they don't have a long-term deal in place.
No. There's no way that they let him walk.
You never know.
I do know. You can take that to the bank. They're not letting him walk.
Matt, at some point, some franchises, they look at winning more. Baltimore doesn't seem like the tradition-rich franchise because they don't have the tradition. And so I don't think, just looking at their history, they're not one to just keep guys around because. Like, the Steelers seem content with having Ben Roethlisberger be there forever and Tomlin be there forever, and all their coaches last there for decades. I know Harbaugh's been there forever, but like, there has to be some pressure bubbling up. And they keep saying about how he's outscored all these teams, but you turtle in the playoffs. And so, like, if they can't trust him at quarterback in the playoffs, you have to think that Harbaugh is in the ear of the general manager, and they say, well, let's see if we can get a thing done. That could actually work out for the Packers on both sides. You get Lamar Jackson out of your conference, you'd only potentially see him in a Super Bowl. And you're like, maybe we know from his playoff experience we'll never see him. He could be like a Drew Brees. Maybe 1 year he'll get lucky. Other than that, like, just overrated. So that's where I think the Ravens and the dynamic for the Steelers are going to be a little bit different. It's almost like you need to win this year, Lamar. And maybe the Ravens do have it and they put it together. They sweep the Steelers and they win the Super Bowl. But I don't think it happens. I'm more on the side of Lamar being figured out. And I'm not saying that they're going to try for Aaron Rodgers. But if the contract can't get figured out, like the head coach coming out and saying, Harbaugh came out and said something like, hey, this is a guy we want long term. How many coaches come out and say something and then do the exact opposite like a week later? Because like if he had, why make the public statement? Lamar should know that he's the guy. So that's where I'm getting that vibe. I'm getting the vibe that things aren't working out and it's a little bit crazy. But that's my thing. I sent you my final pick. You pick. What did you pick for this one? Did I get your pick?
I said Pittsburgh could potentially win that one because they may be resting, but I think you're absolutely out of your mind when you look at this last draft. How many teams were going out of their way to reach for a player because, well, not just a player, but for a quarterback that they're saying quarterback driven? I mean, the only way that I would even hypothetically engage this conversation of Lamar Jackson leaving Baltimore is if there was a quarterback prospect like a Trevor Lawrence that you're like, he's going to be the guy, or a Deshaun Watson, or someone that you're going to take in day one, and he's going to be the face of the franchise, and you're going to plug him in right away and say, this is the guy, and you're going to trade everything else out. Like, I just don't, there's no way that you let him walk. You figure out what you have to do to score enough points. I mean, Baltimore is a team that they won a Super Bowl with Trent Dilfer. They figured out a way to score just enough points to get it done. So I think that would be stupid for them to get rid of him, especially being that he's on the younger side. He's not a 35-year-old quarterback that is waiting in the wings. He has years that you can develop, you can scheme around him. For as freakishly athletic as he is, don't tell me that you'd pass on him in Pittsburgh.
Matt, I'm just saying that I think the league is starting to shift where if you have a chance to get Aaron Rodgers as a Super Bowl rental and you think that he can win you the Super Bowl, you 100% do it. How many teams last year regret not going after Tom Brady? It should be 31. It should be everyone except for the Chiefs, or 30, if you don't count the Buccaneers, because they don't regret it. They love every minute of it. Like even Pittsburgh, looking at what Ben Roethlisberger was doing down the stretch, they had to have been thinking, God damn, why didn't we just get Tom Brady? He's in shape. He's doing stuff down the stretch. He's not hurt. Even if the defense was hurt, like maybe you don't have those injuries or whatever. But like I don't think that there was anything serious where you look at it and say, oh, the Steelers had a great chance to win the Super Bowl last year. They didn't. They weren't going to get through the Chiefs.
Whatever drugs you're on, I want some. Because Matt, there's no way that
you've already saw it happen with Peyton Manning, where he picks up a team and late in his career wins the Super Bowl. Tom Brady, late in his career, picks a team, wins a Super Bowl. I think there are a lot of franchises that have never won Super Bowls that they see this and they say, you know what, this can elevate us where we're going to be a long-term successful franchise. Baltimore would go from having, like you're saying, they won with Trent Dilfer. They also won with Joe Flacco. So now they're going to bring in Aaron Rodgers. Like, I don't think they care who the quarterback is. If Harbaugh thinks that Aaron Rodgers would get them the Super Bowl, I think they would make that trade. And I think Green Bay would be happy getting Lamar back. And like you're looking at it, and if you're the coach and you say, like, look, he's not winning in the playoffs. The playoff teams are always solidly built. They're going to be able to stop him. He doesn't have the accuracy or whatever they need to win in the playoffs. You see it from a lot of guys. Like Drew Brees, did he really have the arm strength to win in the playoffs? He's more of an accurate dink and dunk guy. How many Super Bowls did he win? 1. He got lucky. So maybe Baltimore says, like, maybe he won't get lucky. We have a guy that could come in with our offense. Like, look how many points we're scoring. We can tailor that same exact offense around Aaron Rodgers just without some of the running and the wear and tear. Like, who cares? Let's see if we can scheme some stuff up and win the Super Bowl. So, like, I think every team, other than the team that Tom Brady plays for, and I guess you could say the Chiefs, because they've been there, won a Super Bowl with Mahomes recently, I think every other team should be on the phone calling up Aaron Rodgers. Because he did win 1 Super Bowl. So it's not like you're just trading for Matt Stafford. or someone that was like has been successful or just been in the league for a long time. Like this is a guy that everyone says is MVP, and he's on the verge of winning Super Bowls, but Green Bay might not be the spot. Give him a change of scenery. Maybe he wins two. The only downside is if he goes to an NFC team, he's going to lose to Tom Brady again. At least if he goes to the Ravens or the Steelers or Denver, then he's not losing to Tom Brady till the Super Bowl. So they'll get that appearance. You don't agree with that?
Well, I think you really make it sound easy that you just sign Tom Brady and magically your team wins the Super Bowl. But you've left out the gigantic piece of Tampa Bay had a lot of cap space too when they signed him, that they signed 6 of his buddies as well to kind of cap off what that offense like. You can't even say that the offense was the same because they upgraded tight end, they upgraded wide receiver, they upgraded running back. Like they put all these additional things around them, not even including the additional defensive pieces. So it's not like it was the team was already in place and then they added Brady, which if they were to do that in Pittsburgh, you're still taking some of the same issues that they have, and you're going from a Roethlisberger that isn't very mobile to a Brady who's even less mobile. Like
Matt, Tampa Bay, people were still talking about it like week 8 and 10, writing them off and how Tampa Bay was a disaster. So, like, what's the difference? Who cares if it's a disaster with Ben at quarterback or Tom? Like, if you had to flip a coin, who would you bet on? Like, you'd bet on Tom Brady down the stretch. Like, give me a playoff game, same exact team, who would have a better chance of winning? You know it's Tom. Who would have a better chance of throwing 4 interceptions in that game? Ben Roethlisberger. Easy.
Well, he already did it with Arians as his coordinator. With his head coordinator.
But like Tom Brady was the coordinator. Like Pittsburgh, Ben Roethlisberger is the coordinator. That's Ben's offense. That's why it hasn't changed. If Ben wanted to run the ball, they would find a way to run the ball. But he likes having the ball in his hands. So it doesn't matter. Like you can draft Najee Harris, you just hope that he can catch the ball out of the backfield because that's the way he's going to be getting his yards. Write that down.
I think he will.
Write that down. They're not going to be running between the tackles.
No, don't write that down.
Write that down.
Just pretend like he's not going to get the ball at all. He probably won't have any fantasy production, and he probably wouldn't want to take him.
Well, if you're in a PPR, you definitely want to take him because, like I said, they're going to be dinking and dunking him out of the backfield until Ben gets hurt. Until Ben gets hurt, because sometimes, Matt, he's rehabbing. He can't call the plays. He can't audible from the sideline. So,
well, you just watch because you're going to see there's going to be a power struggle in this early part of the year because they didn't bring in a new offensive coordinator to do the same, to run the same offense, or you'll see, hopefully, if they do continue to do the same things, that they're 500 by the bye week, and you see the Tomlin's name is being mentioned on the hot seat of getting fired because if they're making moves, but then nothing changes, and why are you making moves? Like it becomes an issue with the top, and there's the motivation to move on.
Well, that's what I said. Pittsburgh's not the type of franchise to move on from like their quarterback. They're not going to move on from Tomlin. They're not going to get Aaron Rodgers. Like, who are you kidding? Like, Denver, they don't care. How many quarterbacks did they churn through? Seems like they're always drafting someone, trading someone, winning a playoff game with Tim Tebow. Then they're like, no, we didn't like that win. Like, are you serious, Tim? Get out of here. And then they're like, oh, we're going to get Peyton Manning. Falls into their lap. And then after that, it's like a complete disaster. So Denver's not developing their own quarterbacks.
But you also look at what happened in Denver, too. They probably could have won more. They pushed Wade Phillips out. Like, Wade Phillips was the architect of their defense that carried Brady Manning through those Super Bowls. It wasn't like Manning came in and was setting the world on fire. That defense was playing out of their mind.
Well, it's happening again. Like, they had injuries last year. Got a decent draft. I'd say it's fairly good. And so now they're going to have the extra pieces. All they need to go. And like, I'm getting vibes that you don't think Aaron Rodgers has friends, Matt. Because, like, Tom Brady had all his friends come play with him. Aaron Rodgers said that he's been talking to some guys. So who are these friends he has? Does he have a Gronkowski, maybe?
No, he has all those nerds on Jeopardy that can't help him win a football game and solve math problems and historical data.
Hey, who knows? Maybe I'm completely wrong. And he ends up with, like, the Jets. Could you imagine that? Like, they draft, who'd they get? Zach Wilson?
Yeah.
And then they go ahead and they're like, you know what? We need Aaron Rodgers. So they're just like, and Green Bay's like, we'll take him. Apparently, they're really happy with his backup, though. So that kind of throws a wrench into my plans. With, like, if they were going to trade, like, Lamar Jackson, like, that'd be great if they needed a quarterback. But if Green Bay's kind of ready to move on from him anyway, then maybe they're looking for a suitor that doesn't have a quarterback in return.
He just drafted Wilson just to trade him to Green Bay.
Well, to be honest, if you had a chance where you're like, hey, we drafted you second overall, now you get to learn behind Aaron Rodgers, I think that's a pretty sweet deal for him. I don't know what pieces they could give to Green Bay to make up for it. And then it's almost like, like you were saying, do they have the pieces? Does Aaron Rodgers have enough friends to come on to his team and help them win the Super Bowl? I don't know if he does. Tom Brady developed those friends by winning, 6 Super Bowls before that? But that's how you develop friends that know how to win Super Bowls, Matt. Aaron Rodgers doesn't have that. Who's he bringing? Someone from like 2009? Tim Tebow? He has another Tim Tebow out there that's getting another practice spot. So, anything else you got on the Steelers?
No, not necessarily.
All right, because I wanted to bring up, I know we're just randomly talking about Aaron Rodgers the whole show, and I don't even like him. So it's weird. But I'm like, I kind of want to see him go and win a Super Bowl. Redeem yourself. I'm all for it. I like winners. So maybe he can win me back. The Jeopardy stuff kind of turns me off because, like, I didn't like when Peyton Manning was doing it. He wasn't really winning either. And then, like you said, he was very injured and, like, barely winning for the Broncos. So he kind of lucked into those. But they had that same defense, couldn't really win without him. So who knows? The big games. So they added the 17th game. Like I said, and this is my opinion, there's no point. There is really no point. Like, what's the difference? What was the 17th game that they added here for the Steelers? Was it the Vikings? No, because they had the Bears on here. Who was it? Tennessee? Like, I think that's probably who it was, right? Because they're playing the NFC North. They play the Bears, Lions, the Vikings.
It's going to be their pickup game.
Unless it's the Chiefs, but no, because they have the West out there. They have the Raiders, Chargers, and the Chiefs. So they play the West, the AFC West, the NFC North, and then it looks like it's Tennessee that they randomly picked up, or Green Bay possibly. I don't know, did they go cross division? No, Green Bay's from the North. What am I talking about?
No, I think it's Seattle because Seattle would have been in there with the Niners and Rams.
Oh. You're probably right. That probably is them because they had around the same record last year or whatever. Both went home early in the playoffs. Yeah, it's weird because it used to be very easy. Like, you play your division twice, you play the NFC North. I can kind of figure it out by looking at it. They played the AFC West, and then it's like, oh, but now you also have to play the Bills and Seattle and then Tennessee. So, like, one of those games has to be it. So who knows?
You know who the winner is? You know who the winner of Week 17 is? The 1972 Miami Dolphins. Because add another week, and now it just makes it that much more impossible for anyone to match that undefeated record.
Plus, does anyone really care about that? Tom Brady won more games than them in his undefeated season.
Didn't win the one that mattered, though.
But he won like 7 other ones that mattered. Oh, no, wait, they did go 17-0. Damn, I thought they only had 16 wins. So isn't that what Tom Brady had too? Or did they make it to 18-0? What was their record when they lost? I can't remember.
I don't think that it was. I think it was 17, and lost on 18.
I thought they would finish like 18-1. Yeah, I think it is. So they were one better, Matt. They were one better than the Dolphins. They won 18 in a row. Now, possibly the Dolphins won. If you look like how they do with NCAA football, where like they go back a year where they end the season on the win, so they add it to their total. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they had a win streak than the Patriots and Tom Brady. We'll never know because I'll never look it up. So I'm sure some. I bet if it was John Gruden, Matt, we'd have a fan. They would look it up and they would send it to you, and they would hate on you so bad. But because it's me, who cares? I always say crazy things. And they did have one. So they did win their final game. They lost the one before that. Plus the 72 season, which would have been 14 plus those 3 playoff games, so 17. So they're at 18. And then if we go to the following season, did they win their opener?
Yes.
Yeah, they did. So they had 19. So you'd have to look. Now you have to look at the Patriots. How long was the Patriots win streak? Because I don't know what year that 18-1 season was. The season before it, they didn't win the Super Bowl before it though. I didn't look at that for the Dolphins either. I guess they would have lost in the playoffs, so it doesn't really count. So they would have an 18-win season too. Did the Patriots win the Super Bowl in 2006? No, that was the Steelers, wasn't it?
No, Steelers were 5.
Oh yeah, so that was year 2006. So that was the Super Bowl in 2006. But I think you're right. I think the following season would have been the one. And no, it was the Colts. So that's it. I think both teams, if you're looking at it, and I didn't really do any research, I just kind of browsed it on the show. I think the longest win streak in the NFL would be 18 games, right? I'm sure someone else already did this. Because didn't like the Oklahoma Sooners had like a whatever type win. So they have, someone says that they added in, of course, the Peyton Manning rule, Matt. It was the Colts if you only count regular season. It's like, okay, who the hell's counting the regular season? After that, it is the Patriots. Someone said that they won 21 in a row. But I think that's counting regular season too. And then you get their playoff one. If you add the playoff in, then it's 18, and then the Dolphins are 18. So that's the ones we're going to go with. I don't care about those regular season Peyton Manning awards he gives himself. Any other games stand out to you? I looked at Thanksgiving because I talked about it last week. They have the Bears and the Lions. That's a pretty good one. I like how it's more of a divisional matchup instead of some of the other matchups that are out there. The Raiders and the Cowboys, which we'll probably have 3 tweets about Gruden by that week. And then the Bills and the Saints. What were we going to say about Gruden?
Yeah.
What if they have like the best record in the NFL this year? What do you think the Raiders end up?
Well, if they just win out. They just win every game.
And go undefeated, you just said that would never happen.
Because it's reverse psychology, because then John Gruden will prove me wrong. He'll fly me to Las Vegas. And I'll get a bad haircut as well.
If he does that, if he goes undefeated, I will message him on Twitter every single day until he calls you. Did you see, like, someone did that with Elon Musk? They were like making a video game based on his like SpaceX program or whatever. And so he tweeted at him like every day asking if he would get sued, like if he could have permission to make the game. And then he finally just answered and said like, we probably won't sue you. So like I'll say, hey John, you gotta call Matt. He's your biggest fan. I'll just keep talking every day. You gotta call Matt. He's your biggest fan. He's a high school football coach. I'll write his tweet. I'll copy and paste it, and I'll just schedule it for like 10 years out until he finally calls you. And be like,
he's welcome. He's welcome on the show anytime he wants to come on.
We'll get Matt. We're probably only qualify for Jay Gruden. Or is there another brother that has even less wins? But all right. I was looking. Oh, the other one that I had, Cowboys and Tampa Bay. Why? Why did the Cowboys get the starting season game against the Super Bowl champs? Is Dak back for that? I know they gave him a big contract. Like that should be something. Like what happened? Like the one year where it was like New England would have to like play the Chiefs right away or whatever again. It's like do that. Why give the Cowboys that opening slot? How about you make Tampa Bay play someone like that's good, and maybe the Week 17 messed up their whatever their tough crossover matchups or whatever. But that's kind of sad. That's my one. Everyone's like talking about Week 1 and how that's the highlight. That's not the highlight. That's not the highlight at all. So that's what I had. Anything else you have for the NFL schedule stuff you want to talk about?
No.
All right. Hope you like the show. Like I said, we're gonna go down through the schedule. I had them finish 8 and 9. I'm gonna count it one more time just to make sure. Yep. And so, like I said, that's below a winning record. First time for Tomlin, because we always hear them say that all the time. Like, hey, Tomlin hasn't had a losing record. And I think that Ben is finally done. I thought after last year, I mean, he bounced back from the injury. They started hot. I just don't see another hot start like that. They had an easy schedule. When it came down to it, they couldn't make plays. In the playoffs, they looked horrendous. Like, you don't make that many mistakes. Like, you're a veteran. Like, I've never seen, like, Tom Brady come out and, like, fumble a bunch of times. I saw Peyton Manning do it in the Super Bowl once. But, like, come on. Ben Roethlisberger should not be playing like that. He played like he was a high schooler out there. And so what confidence would I have after watching that Browns game in the playoffs where they were completely beaten? Anything else you have to add on?
Nope.
Do you have your tallies for the wins-loss?
No, I don't. I'll get that to you later.
That's you're letting the listener do all the work. They have to go back through and count them up.
Yeah, they can do that. Look, if you're going to listen to us, just know that my mind's going to change from time to time. So just deal with it.
And you had a tie in there, which will never happen. Although I say that, watch him have 3 ties.
Yeah, just like in our fantasy league, you can never have a tie. There was like 4 of them. A mathematical anomaly.
All right. Switching gears now because I hate to just do NFL the whole time. Fox did a little thing here for the AP poll appearances for the last 10 years to their top 10 teams. Matt, who do you think is the most impressive team like you wouldn't think that would be on this list that's on it?
Oh, by far Notre Dame.
Why? They had Brian Kelly the entire time. Because, so I'm putting this out there. Just because they had wins taken away, that doesn't take away their AP poll appearances, Matt. So, of course, you had to know they were on there. They were undefeated that one year. They were in the playoffs a couple times. So, if I'm looking at this list, it's Alabama number 1, because people that aren't listening to the podcast, they can't see it. So, Alabama's number 1. Clemson's number 2. I think everyone would pretty much know that. Oklahoma is tied with Clemson for number 2, though. So they have the same amount of poll appearances. Obviously didn't have the top-level stuff, but they're always there. I almost wonder if it's just because of how poor their conference has become. Because, the Big 12, I was thinking through it the other day. Why not just have them collapse? There's no other scenario. They keep pushing the Pac-12 being broke. Pac-12 is broke. Pac-12 is broke. Pac-12 is broke. Guess what? They're not competing with anyone on the West Coast in terms of viewers. They have LA. They own it. It's one of the biggest cities. Just like you look at New York, the Big Ten's trying to own it. They really don't own it. They own Chicago. But with LA, that gives the Pac-12 at least some handle that where the Big 12, there's a lot of overlap. Iowa, bigger programs in the Big Ten. What other states are they in? Oklahoma, they own that one. Texas, so they got that state down. But with A&M now being in the SEC, they lost a lot of that because the SEC is so strong A&M has been playing way better than Texas lately, and I don't see that flipping back. I think it's kind of like looking at basketball, like when Shaka Smart was there, everyone's like, oh, Texas is going to take that next step. They never did. Texas Tech did. So much that Texas hired their coach for basketball. I just don't see the football. Like, what are they going to do? Hire Jimbo Fisher? They hired the guy that failed at USC, a school that literally recruited itself, Sarkisian. So, like, what expectations do I have for them? So I think that's why Oklahoma's on the list. Number 4 would be Ohio State. To be honest, I'm surprised that they even missed the poll because they had Urban Meyer, and then they had to have Urban Meyer for the whole 10 years, unless I'm missing and they had like the Luke Fickell year on here. Because that's the only way I would think that they were behind Oklahoma, but maybe I'm crazy. LSU's number 5, Georgia's 6, Wisconsin 7, then 8's Notre Dame. To be honest, like you joked about them even being on here, I thought Notre Dame would be higher. Like I thought Wisconsin had some up and down years because they went through a couple coaches. Like I think Paul Chryst came the same year as Harbaugh. So that's a little bit of a consistency thing there. And then Oregon's number 9, which they kind of fell off. So they probably would have been a lot higher if it was more like weighted towards like the previous 10. And then Michigan's number 10, which is another surprise because they went through the horrendous Brady Harbaugh transition where they were like 5-7. So for them to even be in the top 10 just shows if they ever got good coaching, look out. But is there anyone that you thought would be on here that's not?
Well, are they factoring like weeks in the pool, or how are they calculating AP poll appearances?
It has to be weeks because Alabama's at 164. So divide that by what? 12, 13 weeks? That's probably going to get you your 10 years. Right?
That sounds about right.
Because Alabama, yeah. So if you divide 164 by 10, that's 16 polls a year, which would probably be playoffs, preseason, however many weeks in the season there are, because I think there's like 13 or something. So that has to be what they're looking at every week that they're in. Just off the top of my head, like Penn State, I know they went through the Joe Paterno stuff, but Bill O'Brien had them right there. And like we're only talking about AP poll appearances. It's not top 10 appearances. So like I don't remember them really falling off all that much for them not to be on here. Another one would be like Iowa. And I know they probably would be if you dropped it to like maybe 15 instead of just 10. But those are two that stood out to me. I think you have most of the SEC ones. Florida had some falling off. Auburn always goes up and down, so it makes sense for them not to be on there.
Well, I'm surprised that Notre Dame isn't much higher on there, and that LSU and Georgia aren't lower.
See, LSU has been consistent because they went from Les Miles to where they didn't really have a drop-off. Like, they fired Les Miles and he had a winning year, I believe. And they kind of just promoted Orgeron, and like he was an assistant, right? So like they didn't even have any turnover or whatever. And that's why I was surprised Ohio State was below Oklahoma. Because like they followed the same exact structure. It had to have just fallen into that Luke Fickell year in 2011? Or because I was thinking that was before, but that had to have been the year that dropped them out. And so, I mean, that was a year that Michigan did well, went to the BCS, so that probably helped bump them up. Without that year, so next year I think it would look a little bit different with those, because like Ohio State would have to be up there for the entire Urban Meyer to Ryan Day transition, and maybe LSU would fall a little bit because that was back when they were winning the national championship, or they were having that appearance around that same time with Les Miles. It was the year they lost to Alabama in the rematch, I think. Wasn't that 2011? I can't remember.
I think so.
Some of the smaller schools like Boise, like I'm surprised they're not in there. They're not like highly ranked anymore, but they usually don't lose, and they're usually like ranked 24th. You would think that they would just be consistently ranked for an entire decade. But that's some of the staying power. Like they talk about schools and they're like, hey, which ones do you think like, oh, maybe they shouldn't have Michigan in there? It's like, well, look at the stats. Like, what are you going to do just because they didn't win the national championship or like the Big Ten? Like they're still winning enough more than any other school. So like, how are you going to replace them? Like you mathematically really can't. And so like, it's only that, like that factor that's going to take some of the bigger schools and put them down, even if they expand the playoffs. Because like if you expand the playoffs, looking at how these teams are ranked, like I would think that Oregon would have more appearances, Wisconsin would be in a couple times, Michigan would definitely be in. There were a couple times where they should have been in if they had just won one more game. So like,
well, Oregon's surprising too because they had that fallout from the Helfrich era, like between him and Cristobal.
They hired the legend, Willie Taggart, man.
That's right.
Why are you forgetting that? That was like the hottest coaching hire that you could have made. I think, like, could you imagine if a blue blood program had hired Willie Taggart, how good that would have turned out?
Well, before it's all said and done, he has the potential. I mean, Lane Kiffin resurrected himself at FAU, and that's where Taggart is now. So good things happen in Boca.
If you listened to the show last week, I was all for Willie Taggart. He was an assistant on FCS national championship winning team, Matt. I said he has the coaching acumen. People love him. Why not? Like that's going to be one of the things. And I did see someone, because this kind of annoyed me, where I saw that I don't know if it was like where I saw this, if it was an actual newspaper or just like a blog, but they were saying that like with Michigan's coaching turnover, that it's almost like Jim Harbaugh was fired last year and it's a brand new coaching staff. I'm like, how does that even make sense? Like you still have the top guy that's spooking the quarterback so they're not playing well. Like just because they got some new defensive guys. And I think it came on the news that they were finally able to hire, I think it's Klingsdale from Kentucky, their big defensive backs coach that has been doing a ton of their recruiting in Ohio. Michigan finally hired him. And they had been trying to get him when Don Brown was there. So I wonder if it was kind of like a Don Brown type issue where he wasn't comfortable making that jump. But Michigan State had just tried to hire him last year with Mel Tucker, and he was staying at Kentucky. So I'm kind of surprised that randomly Michigan's defensive back coach gets hired at Buffalo. I think that's where he went. He was there for like, 3 months, 4 months. And so he gets hired as a head coaching job, which I can't remember. Was he one of the one? I think he was one of the guys that was the coach for the Ravens. Michigan hired a couple of their guys, but I could be wrong. But he got promoted, and then they finally got the guy that they wanted all along from Kentucky, which I thought was a strange move because he's one of the ones that has been recruiting Kentucky well. So I wonder if they're going to have that drop-off. Who knows? But I don't think I really have anything else for college football. Do you have anything?
No.
All right, into the final bell. I meant to mention this last week, but Oakland, the A's, they're going to lose the team. MLB's already ready to approve them moving to a new city. And so everyone's like, all right, awesome. Like, let's try to find them a landing spot. And they're talking about moving them to Nashville. At that point, like, just get rid of the name. The Nashville A's, kind of weird. I know that they weren't an original Oakland team because baseball teams moved from all over. They originally started all near the cities that had railway, so they could ride the trains to games. So weren't they in like Philly or something? Like I want to say some of those cities had multiple teams, but there's been a push. I didn't see it mentioned in all the sites, but there's a push to try to get a team down here in North Carolina instead. But they had said that one of the factors that could derail the move to Nashville and or possibly Charlotte would be the fact that they just both had public funding for their AAA stadiums. And Major League Baseball has a rule that states that you can't have a minor league team within like a certain distance around your major league stadium. Which is kind of weird. But it's one of the ones where when they were talking about putting a proposal for like Raleigh to get a team, there were some zoning issues with like the Durham Bulls. Like how would they be able to do it? Would the team then have to be on the east side of Raleigh? And then would that make a negative impact for their bid? But I wonder if they're going to bid in for Oakland anyway. I mean, the Hurricanes are doing well in hockey. I didn't see anything about their attendance, but it's one of the things, like, why be loyal to a team? They could just up and move at any time. Like Oakland, just leaving. How do you know the Pittsburgh Pirates aren't going to leave? Some owner just buys them and then they're done. Like Steelers are pretty much a fixture that I'd be shocked. But like the other two, like 2 decades ago before Sid got there, the Penguins were like bottom in attendance. They were ready to make the move somewhere else. So you never know. Like Lemieux came in and saved them. But that's my final bell. I hate when teams move, but it's almost like, why be loyal to a team? They're definitely not loyal to you. You got anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head with it.
Yeah, it's just frustrating because like you try to follow a team, and like I know there are people that have season tickets. They just watched the Raiders move to Las Vegas. Las Vegas now is doing like a DJ for the Raiders games. Did you see that?
Yeah, it did. It's going to be a great atmosphere. Like but I think when you look at the A's, this isn't something new. Like there's always these issues with the city of Oakland trying to have the fun. Like that's why Al Davis had the issues that he had trying to get the stadium upgraded, and why he went back and forth from the Coliseum to Oakland, and eventually moving out to Las Vegas, because you have to keep maintaining things like the infrastructure of your stadiums and things to keep up to date, keep it good for the fans.
And that's true. And I think that's where you're going to see a lot more teams just move, like just easier as things grow and like become more like digital type stuff. At some point, it's not going to really matter where the teams play at all. Like I almost wonder if you're just only going to see them in the major cities. Like how many? Like you're just going to have 5 New York teams that share a stadium, because like people are just going to watch on their phones anyway. They're going to stop going to games. Although I could be wrong. Who knows? They keep trying to kill all like the tailgating and stuff, which is like the fun part of going to the game. No one wants to sit in row 329 up in the nosebleeds buying $12 pretzels and drinking $30 beers. Like, what are they talking about? So that's my last thing. Thanks for listening. I hope you like the scheduled show. We'll be back next week, hopefully with some bigger stuff, with some of like the NHL playoffs underway and like the NBA starting. So thanks for listening. We'll see you then.